Pigweed here. Today we review an IPA and discuss Christian nationalism. Hello and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crow Hill. Good evening, Crow Hill.
Good evening, Pigweed.
What is on your mind?
Well, the rotten podcast you asked me to listen to for this show.
It had a cool logo and a very professional looking setup.
It did.
And totally addressed the topic of the day. And I figured that they were going to be arguing on behalf of it. So I wanted to hear one of those. Right. And how'd it go?
Yeah. Well, the podcast is called Prove All Things.
Yes.
And it's apparently a couple of...
what does that mean? Why would they call it?
Okay, so in the New Testament, Paul says... Test all things, approve that which is good. I think in the King James it says prove all things.
I see.
Instead of
all
test
right.
all.
So there's a biblical reference.
Yeah, biblical reference. And okay, that's great. So they want to...
Definitely Christian guys.
It's a reasonable name for a podcast. But it was a bad intro. They didn't even tell us what the show was about for like 7 minutes into the show.
Yeah.
It was like, what's going on here? The structure was bad. And then once they got into it, I could only listen to about 20 minutes and got tired of it.
No music, no graphics, no humor, no fun, and no cohesion.
Yeah.
And at no point did they actually make an effort to define Christian nationalism, which is what I was listening to the podcast for.
Yes, and you know what
meandering off.
Yeah. And you know what chaps me about all this? What? They get more listeners than we do.
Yes, they do. They got live listeners and they're live streaming on Facebook.
There's no justice in the world.
That's fair. Well, all right. Let's see what kind of justice you get out of this.
Yeah. So
that's
what do we
your
got?
Normal. Look at this.
Change of heart.
Hey. What do you think when you think IPA when you see that?
I do not. I do not think IPA when I see that.
This is a black IPA.
Right.
And what I consider to be a very...
underappreciated style.
Yes. I mean, I fell in love with this years ago, and as soon as I did, the company stopped brewing it. Duclaw's Black Lightning, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Tried to clone it. I got pretty close. One of my favorite beers that I brew.
Yeah.
And you just rarely see it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about a black IPA is the IPAs are obviously very hop forward, and they have a very strong hop flavor. But introducing the black IPA gives it a different kind of a feel because you've got the dark malts going on with the strong hop presence, and it's an interesting twist on the style.
I agree. So you often get beers tend to be malty or hop forward, and this one's a malty beer with some hop presence.
And also this one has a nice little bit of that roasty edge to it.
Yes, so you get roastiness, and then Bell's doesn't give you any information. They
don't give us any information.
But the one I've always used Amarillo, so I'm going with a citrusy hop, and I just like the contrast, and I think this could be a little hoppier.
Yeah, it could be, but I really like it. It's got maybe even a touch of a coffee flavor to it in that dark roastiness. But yeah,
now
I like it.
If it didn't say black IPA and just handed it to me and said, where would you're judging, what style would you put this under? I'd have a hard time.
I'd have a hard time too, but I might put it under a misguided version of an imperial porter
that he overhopped.
Yes.
Correct. But and so it says experimental black IPA. So this was part of a variety pack. Yeah. And so who knows? Who knows if they'll stick? If they're going to stick with it, or if it's just an experiment and they just a seasonal thing. Maybe once they hear this glowing review, they will.
Yeah, and I don't mean to insult Bell's by calling it a misguided version of an imperial, because it's not a misguided version of an imperial porter. It is a very good black IPA, very tasty. So keep them coming, Bell's. That's fantastic.
Okie dokie, Christian nationalism. So I'm seeing the name popping up here and there. They're not very clear about it. I'm not very certain about it. And so when I begin to investigate, this is what I get. I get A, it's an invention of the left to denigrate and insult patriotic Christians.
Right.
Or B, it's a real movement that is way overdue if we're to save this great nation and to restore the rotting foundation.
Okay.
Or C, it's a real movement and it's a threat to religious liberty and the Constitution that seeks to transform America into a fascist theocracy.
Okay, those seem like three reasonable options.
So, I didn't find any agreement on these things, and I don't think there is. I think it's all of them.
I think that's a pretty good summary. So I think it's certainly the wet dream of the liberals. that they have something to complain about conservative Christians.
Yes.
They want to say they're trying to bring about the Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, and they were behind January 6th.
Yeah, exactly.
The darkest day in American history.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Gettysburg. Fewer people died at Gettysburg than on January 6th. Yeah, so it is definitely the whipping boy of the left. Right. No question about that. And they hate it. Here's a quote from a book from some leftist sociologists. An ideology that idealizes and advocates the fusion of American civic life with a particular type of Christian identity and culture. It includes assumptions of nativism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and heteronormativity, along with divine sanction for authoritarian control and militarism. That's from some book called "Taking America Back for God."
Yeah. Okay.
Written from people who don't want to take America back.
Right. Well, here's an opinion piece from the Washington Times.
Yeah.
And here, you read it for me. I can't even see it.
Yeah. The truth is the media, Hollywood, universities, and many elites have never understood Christianity, have often openly had disdain for its values, and have sometimes taken steps to undermine its presence in public life. Now that the influence of faith or culture has waned, many have moved from a stop infusing your faith into your politics into a full-on effort to manifest a Christian nationalist boogeyman.
All right, so he's on the side of, all right, this is just a leftist made up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
this quote does raise a question for me.
Yeah.
Is boogeyman with two O's or one?
Wait a minute.
Because sometimes it's boogie with I usually see it as bogeyman, right? And
yes.
He's got the two O's.
He's making sure that you
want to make sure I'm saying
the boogie down.
The boogie, yeah, the boogie, yeah. Okay.
So, because in this case, infusing that, and this is what I've seen, and I agree with what he's saying here, is that it's true we no longer have religious faith tests for public service.
Yeah.
But what we saw in the Amy Coney Barrett was that having strong Christian beliefs might disqualify you from public service.
That's right.
That's how they made it sound.
Yeah,
and so now it's become not only being religious and being political at the same time.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Well, you're allowed to be religious as long as you're a leftist religious person.
Yes. And as long as you're religious while at church, but you don't actually practice any of those things in your real life.
Yes, exactly. As long as it's just in your head. That's the way
Say
the left.
Say it out loud, and don't pray in front of an abortion clinic or anything.
The way the left understands freedom of religion is you can think anything you want. Just
act on it.
Yeah, exactly. Don't act.
Live your life like that.
No, you can't do that. But you can think anything you want. You have the freedom to think your silly thoughts. Just don't. All
right. So do you want to do? Yeah. All right. So that's the.
Well, let's break down the words. So, Christian nationalism and Christian nationalism.
Right,
so,
good.
Nationalism is a political ideology, by itself, and movement characterized by the promotion of the interests of a particular nation, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining the nation's sovereignty over its homeland. The central theme of nationalism is that the nation is the primary basis for political identity and allegiance, surpassing other social bonds and legal jurisdictions. So nationalism would be like, I'm not a citizen of Europe, I'm a citizen of France. Or I'm not a citizen of the world, I'm a citizen of Canada, right?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
No, I have no problem with that at all. Exactly. I mean, the idea, a lot of people don't like nationalism because they think it becomes too focused on the particulars of that area. And also
but I also think that they think that bleeds into the belief in the superiority of your nation,
right?
And therefore, not only the superiority when you think of German nationalism, and your right to run roughshod over your neighbors because you're a better country.
And the other aspect of it is that they frequently tie it in with violence. Like whenever there are stories, like about some crazy war breaks out in Eastern Europe, and they'll say Chechen nationalists, right? They'll throw nationalist in there to make them sound
scary
and bad,
okay,
right?
Yeah. So, how is that not patriotism?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because I suppose
it's like a softer, nicer way.
Yeah,
but the same thing as far as I can tell.
To some extent, I think nationalism can foster unity and pride within a nation, but it can also lead to exclusion. The idea is that it can lead to exclusionary policies where you're saying we're trying to keep out different ethnicities, or we're trying to, you know what I'm saying? So nationalism can be a little more exclusive than patriotism.
It can be, but I still think that immigrants that come into your country and get with the program, I don't think that there's going to be this gangs of New York natives versus
not
invaders.
Here. Not here, but that's a distinction between like American nationalism and
let's say French nationalism. Are you saying we're exceptional?
No, I'm saying that America is
no, seriously though, but that is what I consider to be part of American exceptionalism.
Yes, exactly. That is, we're not tied to a certain ethnicity, for example.
So are second generation Turks in Germany that only speak German.
Yeah.
Are they Germans?
Right. Not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
Right. Not the same way that you're an American.
Yeah. So in that sense of nationality or nationalism could be an ethnic kind of nationalism where you're saying no. You know, Serbia is for Serbs and Germany is for Germans, and
just because you've been here for 4 generations doesn't make you a Serb.
Yes, and in America, the distinction would be that we base our national identity on a creed almost, right? On a sense of.
Are you saying that nationalism and patriotism are almost the same thing here, but not everywhere?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
I would think so. I think nationalism can have some ugly ramifications to it. So then when you add Christian nationalism, now here's the thing that jumped out at me in these quotes here. In the first definition of nationalism, it said, the central theme, blah, 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 surpassing other social bonds and legal jurisdictions, where Christian nationalism, obviously a Christian can't have his primary allegiance to the nation. Right? So Christian nationalism can't be my first allegiance is the United States, unless somehow you're going to like make the United States and Christianity equivalent or something, which no Christian's going to do that. But Christian nationalism promotes the belief that a particular nation is fundamentally Christian and that its government and policies should reflect Christian values.
Okay.
Which, once again, I'm not sure what's so scary about that.
I mean, the pushback from Rachel Maddow and company that of these weirdos who think that America is a Christian nation. I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Yeah. In what sense is America a Christian nation? I can go down to the 7-Eleven. There's pornography on for sale.
I mean the opposite. I mean, is it that it's not founded? On Christian principles. That its history has not been one of we're not right. We don't have a theocratic government that's pushing Christianity on its people, but we do have the Christian foundation. The people that came here were Christians. Mm-hmm. The idea of the First Amendment was that there should be no Christian denomination favored over any other.
Yeah.
But it's perfectly understood that, we're all...
Well, at the same time, so I mentioned I ragged on the one podcast you sent me, Prove All Things. The other podcast you sent me was Babylon Bee.
Right.
And they interviewed Doug Wilson, and that was actually a really good one.
And it's not a there's generally satire, but they also do serious things on the side. So
That's right. I think they speak more truth through satire than most people speak when they're trying to be serious. But anyway, in the interview with Doug Wilson, he brought up the fact that when the First Amendment was written, the federal government wasn't going to have any established religion, right. But like all the states had an established religion. Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's all, but at least most of the states had this is a Baptist state, and this is a Presbyterian state, and this is an Episcopal state.
Right. We're in a Catholic state. Right?
Yes, exactly. So you have a very and he also brought up this good old court case here. Church of the Holy Trinity versus United States.
Well, don't you have a series of those? But you want to just focus on this one?
There was a whole series. Yeah.
Here, just the first principles.
Yeah. So the question is whether America is a Christian nation. There are 4 Supreme Court cases saying that, but that base their opinion on
the understanding, not the imposition.
Yeah.
Just like, well, obviously, as a Christian nation. But go ahead. Which one do you want to do?
So I'm looking at Holy Trinity versus the United States, which
All right,
is
because the
kind
one
of
before
clever.
that I want to do when you're done. Here, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So it goes through stuff going back to Christopher Columbus. You know, like
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus, they were sent over here in the hope of spreading Christianity. And it just goes historically through all the things building up to the founding of the country, all of which have a strong Christian component to them. And then it goes through the charter.
Oh yeah, right. This was all in one ruling.
Yeah. And he's basically the author of this opinion.
But I love the name of the.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Who is it versus who?
Church of the Holy Trinity versus the United States.
Yeah. Well, just leave out the church. And
Yeah,
just
exactly.
say,
Holy Trinity versus the United States. Yeah. I hope it never comes to that. So he goes through all this historical stuff about, and all these state charters. All these state charters that say, look, this is essentially a Christian state and blah, 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 blah. And it comes to the conclusion, there is no dissonance in these declarations. There is a universal language pervading them all, having one meaning. They affirm and reaffirm that this is a religious nation. And then other places he says very explicitly that it's a Christian nation. So there
are two others which I think are helpful. One is the polygamy ruling. Right?
On what grounds?
On what grounds? Well, it's contrary to the spirit of Christianity and the civilization which Christianity has produced in the Western world.
Right.
That is the decision. Is rooted in that.
Yes.
And then the other one is about conscientious objection.
Right.
And this one's the most recent, 1931.
1931. Okay.
Yeah. We are a Christian people, according to one another, the equal right of religious freedom and acknowledging the reverence, the duty of obedience to the will of God.
Yeah.
That's how religious objections, people not going to war, people not getting the jab,
Right.
Because we acknowledge this Christian foundation to the nation.
Yes, and what I'm reading between the lines there, I'm hearing Martin Luther saying it's not right nor safe to go against conscience. Right, that one part of religious obligation is the primacy of your conscience, and you can't go against your conscience. And that's the people who are saying, okay, I know the government wants me to go take a gun and go shoot those people, but I can't do that.
Right.
So this whole affirmation of the right of conscience is a very Christian principle, specifically a Protestant Christian principle. Yeah. Catholics caught up eventually, but I think it was Luther that led the way on that. So Doug Wilson, in this interview with the Babylon Bee, raised, I thought, the crux of the matter, which is all law is moral. All law has to do with this is good behavior, this is bad behavior.
Yeah, right and wrong, right?
Yeah. So you're going to have some...
Where is it rooted?
You have some value system. What's it going to be? Is it going to be Islam? Is it going to be Christianity? Or is it going to be, and now the secularists are going to say, no, it's this Enlightenment idea of...
The greater good.
Yeah, all this other kind of stuff. Well, how's that working?
Yeah.
It's really not working out as well. Jordan Peterson recently said the Enlightenment experiment has failed. And I think he's right that this idea that we can separate values and morals from religion and just go based on reason and all that.
Right, we can create a new moral code based on reason and rationality.
Yeah, sorry, it didn't work out. It was an interesting idea.
Or we could just base it on do it if it feels good.
Yeah, sure, we could do that.
Which has kind of been going on.
We could just have the nation of hedonism. Right, exactly. Or it could, maybe it's stoicism. Maybe that's the found. But you have to have some. One of the things that Jordan Peterson harps on quite a lot is that whenever you have values, you have a hierarchy of values, and they all point towards some peak. Right, something that ties all those values together. Well, what is the thing that ties together the values of in the United States? And people want to say, well, it's the Declaration of Independence, or it's okay, that's nice, but it's really not deep or rich enough. You're trying to hang too big a picture on too small of a nail.
Oh, that's good. you steal that, or did you make that up?
I don't
right
know.
Now?
I probably heard it somewhere.
I like it.
Yeah.
But all right. So Christian nationalism,
Yeah.
and people who identify as Christian nationalists, and I don't know which. Did you listen to the one Maya Torres? Is that Flores? Who
No.
is the Hispanic woman who flipped the most Hispanic, like a 98% Hispanic border jurisdiction.
Okay.
Not jurisdiction. What is it? Congressional district.
Congressional district, yeah.
District.
But then lost the next time.
Right.
Yeah,
Then lost the next time. But she claimed herself to be a Christian nationalist and ran on that, and it tells you something about Hispanic culture, Hispanic life, that that this informs your...
Yeah, well, I mean, aren't Mexicans all like really into Our Lady of Guadalupe?
So into it.
You know,
I mean, even the ones that don't, right, even the ones that don't go to church, I mean, it's probably the most popular tattoo in prison. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't care who you are.
So for them, the idea of the nation and religion fitting together somehow, they're like, yeah, of course. I mean, look at this tattoo.
That's how it works.
Right. Now, I would, before we go too far on this, I'd like to say that there is a downside. There is a negative, ugly side to Christian nationalism.
Oh, so this is the... you're saying the downside that's not the boogeyman.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's think of Bob Jones University.
All right.
Which is a very conservative Christian college. That
what denomination?
They're probably Baptist. I don't really remember. Right. They had such strict rules. They wouldn't allow interracial dating as recently as, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. Which, I mean, come on.
Catch up a little bit.
Yeah. So there is a fear of somebody like that. When people are trying to raise the boogeyman of Christian nationalism, that's the kind of thing they're going to point to. They're going to say, you're going to try to outlaw interracial marriage. You're going to try to, send doctors to prison. You're going to do all this other kind of thing.
Right. So take the worst case scenario and then elevate that to the face of the movement.
Yes. Yes. But I think the response to that is a response to that. Who's destroying our institutions right now? Mm-hmm. Is it the Christians that are destroying institutions right now? No, it's like university professors, and it's the
neo-Marxists.
Yeah. So are Christians anywhere near as much of a threat as wokeism or political correctness? Or, for example, the stinking Democrats stood up and applauded for abortion at the State of the Union. I mean, that's just disgusting.
Yeah.
And
the Catholic Nancy Pelosi and Catholic Joe Biden.
Yeah. Standing up and applauding for abortion. I mean, there's this thing that happens sometimes on social media where someone will dismiss somebody by saying pronouns in their bio. Like somebody will post something and somebody will just respond pronouns in their bio as if that immediately disqualifies them from any rational conversation. Yeah. So I'm starting to adopt the mindset that I'm just going to say, They clap for abortion.
Anything you have to say after
exactly.
this.
Yeah, sorry, nothing else that you say has any weight whatsoever. You clap for abortion, you're done. Out.
Right.
So
but this the notion that let's talk about when and the degree at which religious people were political and not political.
Okay. Sure.
So let's just say we're, I don't know, in the 60s and 70s, did churches kind of stick to themselves more than they have now? And so that's what people are looking at going, wait a minute, religious people are getting way more political than they used to be.
Yeah, so there's been ebbs and flows. I mean, the different denominations have different perspectives on this. Like the Baptists tend to be much more separation between church and state types. The Episcopals obviously come from the Church of England, where, Christianity is the national religion of England. So you have Presbyterians tend to be a little more comfortable with some connection between church and state. Episcopals do, Catholics clearly do, Baptists, and then as you go out farther into the Anabaptist territory, Quakers and who are the guys in Pennsylvania? The Pennsylvania Dutch, those guys, the
Amish.
Amish, exactly. So you have different levels of comfort with being involved politically. Some Christians have believed that they shouldn't even vote, that they shouldn't be involved in politics whatsoever, that there's the kingdom of this world and there's the kingdom of God, and those are separate things, and don't mix the two of them.
Right. And so that would be that, and our Christian nationalists would be at the other end going, look, we have sat by long enough, and I think, was it Doug Wilson who was saying, we have sat by and watched the termites eat the foundation out of this country, and now somebody's got to step in and reinforce this foundation.
Yeah.
And so I think that they would say, we would actually very much like to be on the sidelines, but the rot has gotten so bad that we are forced to step in before this whole thing collapses.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's where we are. Yeah. I saw a tweet today that had, the if you look at the books in the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, have you ever seen the spines?
Right.
Like the spine on the left is a sturdy column, and then the next one is a little less, and it kind of works its way down, and so you get this crumbling column.
Yes.
And so the tweet was, "You are here," and it shows a little line right toward the end, towards the end where it's about to fall apart. And I think that's pretty much where we are. The nation, it can't survive much more of this, and there has to be some sort of a serious change in order for the nation to
now.
Stay whole.
So back to the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Are people like Doug Wilson and those who think that the rot is imminent?
Yeah.
Are they looking forward to a fascistic theocracy?
Well, so I sort of know Doug Wilson. Yeah, I sort of know Doug Wilson.
Who only likes that if he is the fascist leader.
Yeah, exactly. We've interacted a little bit over the years. I've listened to some of his podcast, it's called, and followed him somewhat. And I can't imagine, in this interview, he's talking about how it's actually Christian values that support pluralism, not Muslim values, clearly, and not even secular values. Secular values don't promote pluralism. It's Christians who say, yes, we should support the rights of Jews and Muslims and non-religious people and Buddhists and everybody else to do what they want to do. Because Christianity worked through all this kind of stuff. Now, obviously, there were some bad things in the past, the Spanish Inquisition and other kinds of problems that Christianity has created and caused. But Christianity has worked through that stuff and come to a point of saying, no, it's really best for people to respect people's conscience, to respect their liberty, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really Christianity that provides the best intellectual framework for
permitting other religions and not imposing a single, not only a religious belief, or a single religious belief. Because if you had a theocracy, you couldn't have a plurality of Protestant and Catholic theocracy.
Right.
I mean, there just have to be one, and nobody's arguing for that.
Who's going to win? And when I say that Christianity provides it, Judaism also does. If you look at what happens in Israel, you have more rights as a Christian in Israel than you have as a Christian as a Muslim. Yeah.
Or as a Muslim.
Yeah, and probably you might have more rights in Israel as a Christian than you have in the United States as a Christian in some respect. I mean, we throw people in jail for praying outside of abortion clinics. I don't think they do that in Israel. But so Christianity and Judaism also have gone through all this. They've figured it out. They've come to a point of saying, no, we do respect pluralism. We do respect beliefs. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to allow everything to fall apart and let the termites eat the house down.
Right. I agree. I mean, I think from these three options that we have here, there is a little bit of boogeyman going on from the left. That there is it isn't just a sort of a generalized. Well, I mean, let's put it this way: a movement needs cohesion and a leader and stuff like that. In that sense, I'm not seeing it.
No. You can't unite all of the dispersed denominations of Christians in the United. Who's going to do that?
Right.
Who's going to pull? I mean, Christians divide over the stupidest things.
They know, right?
That where this,
Right. We're going to have for potluck dinner.
You have 75 different denominations of Presbyterians debating over every possible thing. And the same with the Baptists, and the same with everybody else. The Methodists, good grief, there's a zillion Methodists. So I can't see them uniting all under Doug Wilson and making him.
No, I think that what's going on is there is a loose, vague sense of this rot.
Yeah.
And a sense that various and unorganized religious people think it's time for us to get involved.
Yeah.
And then the media has called this an organized threat.
Yeah.
Which...
And what they're appealing to, what the Christian nationalists are appealing to, is not this particular version of Methodism or anything else. They're appealing to the broad consensus of Christian sentiment that lies behind the history of our country. I mean, that's the way the country's been all along. The country was...
And what they say is church and state is in the Constitution, and it's never been a part of a political life, and you nut jobs are trying to bring Christianity into politics where it doesn't belong.
Right.
And just with a complete misunderstanding of how this whole thing works.
So read Church of the Holy Trinity versus the United States, and that'll cure you of that. So I guess I had a couple of things I wanted to mention here. Just think how horrible it is in countries that actually have established churches.
Okay.
Like England, Denmark, Greece, and Iceland. Mm-hmm. I mean, just think about all the people who were being persecuted for their religion and like burned at the stake and
that's just
tortured.
Happening.
It's happening
left
all
and
the time.
right.
All the time.
Left and right.
In those countries.
If you try to not go to the Church of Iceland, don't even think about it.
I know. Good grief. They're going to whip you at the post in the town square.
Yes, and they have all those, lava flows.
I've heard they put your head in a lava flow if you don't go to the established Church of Iceland. And then the other thing that occurred to me is the big boogeyman of the anti-Christian nationalists is Handmaid's Tale. Which are we closer to? Handmaid's Tale or Nazi Germany? We are so close to Nazi Germany.
Right.
We've got major universities where Jews are afraid to go to class.
Yes. And they're being supported by all of the authorities.
Yeah. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
So this idea of we're on the precipice of falling into the handmaids. No, we're on the precipice of going into Nazi Germany. That's what we're on the precipice of.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't know. I mean, there are certainly people who have agendas on the Christian nationalist side of things that I might not agree with. But I tell you, I would rather be in a country where Doug Wilson was calling the shots than in a country where Joe Biden was calling the shots.
Well, I hear you.
All
right.
What do you guess?
I got one more thing.
Okay.
You know what? This reminds me of Alan Hunter's new book.
Oh.
Have you read it?
Which one?
You know what? I cannot think of the name right now. He's the guy that wrote Florida Man.
Yeah, well, that was a good book.
I can't think of the name of it, but anyway, it's set in the near future where an extreme Christian nationalist party takes power in the U.S.
Okay.
And so it's about like how what are the circumstances that allowed this to happen?
Yeah.
What were the consequences of it?
Right.
I'm just thinking that I think it would be fun if we read it and then reviewed.
Yeah, let's both get a copy. I mean, it's not a shortcut to the classics, but it's
no, it's not. But it's a very interesting sort of hypothetical near future thing that I think but all sides of the Christian nationalist debate would enjoy, and I think we would like it.
Yeah, so
a great writer.
And I'll provide a link to the Florida Man episode too, so people can check that one out.
Very good. Yes. All right.
There we go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.